For decades, Switzerland owned the global watch industry. Rolex and some other watch brands had built a reputation so powerful that even the wealthy wore them as a symbol of achievement. But in 1969, a small Japanese company launched a watch for Christmas that would trigger the worst crisis in watchmaking history. Within 15 years, 2/3 of Swiss watchmakers would lose their jobs. And the most shocking part, this watch brand just made a couple of hundred pieces in the first year. This is the story of the Quartz Crisis, and the moment a $20 watch almost changed everything. Now, before we can understand how close Swiss watchmaking came to disaster, we need to understand just how powerful it was before the crisis began. At the beginning of the 20th century, until well after the Second World War, 95% of all mechanical watches sold worldwide came from Switzerland. There was practically no competition, and the technical and craftsmanship lead was too great. Not just that, Swiss brands dominated global markets, controlled the highest levels of craftsmanship, and enjoyed a reputation that competitors could only dream of. And among all the respected Swiss brands, Rolex occupied a unique position. It wasn't the oldest watchmaker, but it had mastered something incredibly valued: trust. Rolex had built a reputation for reliability, precision, and prestige. If a company wanted to gain an advantage, it had to design a better movement, train better craftsmen, or develop better manufacturing techniques. The rules of the game were clear, and Switzerland had spent generations mastering them. But then something happened that nobody fully appreciated at the time. A technological revolution was quietly taking shape thousands of miles away in Japan. And unlike previous competitors, this one wasn't trying to make a better mechanical watch. It was trying to make mechanical watches irrelevant. The Swiss believed they were competing against another watchmaker. In reality, they were competing against the future. On December 25, 1969, Seiko introduced the Astron, the world's first commercially available quartz wristwatch. Looking back, it's easy to treat this moment as the beginning of a revolution, but at the time, very few people understood what they were witnessing. The Astron didn't arrive with dramatic headlines predicting the collapse of Swiss watchmaking. It didn't immediately dominate the market. In fact, the first model was incredibly expensive. When it was launched, its price was around 450,000 Japanese yen and about $1,250. Seiko made only 200 of them, and they were only sold in Japan, and each cost roughly the same as a small car in Japan. To many observers, it looked like an impressive but niche technological achievement. What made the Seiko Astron so terrifying wasn't how it looked. In fact, by modern standards, it seemed almost ordinary. The original Astron 35 SQ arrived in an 18-karat gold case with a clean, futuristic design that reflected the optimism of the space age. Seiko produced only a small batch for the Japanese market. On paper, it hardly looked like the tool that would shake an entire industry. But hidden beneath that gold case was a technological breakthrough that changed watchmaking forever. The Astron delivered an astonishing accuracy of approximately ±0.2 seconds per day, or about ±5 seconds per month, a level of precision that mechanical watches of the era simply couldn't match. Its quartz oscillator, powered by a battery with roughly a 1-year lifespan, replaced the complex springs, gears, and escapements that Swiss watchmakers have spent centuries perfecting. To put that achievement into perspective, the finest mechanical watches in the world were measured in seconds lost or gained per day. The Astron reduced that error to mere seconds per month. It wasn't just a better watch, it was a completely different definition of what a watch could be. In a single stroke, Seiko moved the goalposts of the entire industry. And suddenly, a company from Japan had fired the first shot in a war that would leave the Swiss watch industry fighting for its survival. The real danger wasn't the product itself, the real danger was the technology inside it. And quartz technology changed all of that. Instead of relying on hundreds of moving parts, a quartz watch used an electronic circuit and a tiny quartz crystal that vibrated at a highly stable frequency. The result was astonishing. Quartz watches weren't just slightly more accurate than mechanical watches, they were dramatically more accurate. And unlike mechanical craftsmanship, electronics had a terrifying advantage: they became cheaper over time. Now, what made the Seiko Astron truly amazing wasn't its price on launch day. In fact, the original Astron was anything but cheap. The Swiss weren't scared of a cheap watch in 1969. They were scared of what it would become. The original Seiko Astron cost around $1,250, about the price of a small car in Japan. But unlike mechanical watches, quartz technology got cheaper every year. What began as a luxury breakthrough soon became affordable to millions and eventually turned into a $20 threat that sent shock shockwaves through the entire Swiss watch industry. Every year, manufacturing improved. Every year, production costs fell. Every year, quartz technology became more accessible. What started as an expensive innovation gradually transformed into a mass market product. Then it became an affordable product. Then it became a cheap product. And if you're enjoying this episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because the next chapter reveals the historic Swiss watch industry. And that's when the real panic began. The collapse didn't happen overnight. Like most disasters, it started quietly. At first, Swiss manufacturers noticed increased competition, then they noticed slowing sales, then they noticed consumers choosing quartz watches at an alarming rate. What made the situation so dangerous was that the average customer's decision was completely rational. If a quartz watch were cheaper, more accurate, and required less maintenance, why would an ordinary buyer choose a more expensive mechanical alternative? And all of these reasons posed a huge threat not only to the watchmaking industry, but also to the Swiss economy as a whole. By the late 70s, many Swiss watch brands suffered huge losses. Thousands of jobs were lost, and a sizable chunk of Switzerland's GDP went missing. The rest of the world was churning out quartz watches, leaving little market share for Switzerland's expensive mechanical counterparts. Millions of consumers reached the same conclusion. As the 1970s progressed, the consequences became impossible to ignore. Sales of traditional mechanical watches declined sharply, while Japanese manufacturers expanded their influence across global markets. Companies that had once seemed invincible suddenly found themselves fighting for survival. Historic brands began disappearing. Some went bankrupt, others were acquired, many simply faded into obscurity. On top of that, sales of the higher quality and higher priced analog quartz watches picked up in 1976. That set up the second great battle of the quartz watch revolution, Seiko versus Switzerland. Now, all Japanese watch firms adopted quartz technology, but the undisputed leader was Seiko. No other watch embraced quartz technology as avidly as Seiko did. First analog, then digital. It followed Astron with the world's first quartz analog ladies watch in 1972. Then came a series of LCD firsts. The first LCD watch with a 6-digit display in 1973, and the first multi-function digital watch in 1975. Seiko consistently developed and improved its quartz technology. By 1975, Seiko had invested in plants to make integrated circuits, batteries, and LCD panels. Employees were retrained to work with the new technology. Seiko also increased its investments in robots and equipment for high-volume automated production. And all of that paid off. By 1977, Seiko had become the world's largest watch company in terms of revenues. According to the reports, Seiko made around 18 million pieces in a year. What's more, Seiko's decision to develop both analog and digital quartz watches proved to be very wise. But the most shocking damage wasn't measured in company balance sheets, it was measured in human lives. Quartz technology had wreaked havoc on the Swiss watch industry. By 1985, watch industry employment had fallen by 2/3. Between 1974 and 1983, Swiss watch production fell from a record 96 million units to 45 million. This wasn't a business slowdown, it was an industrial catastrophe. And perhaps the most frightening part was that there seemed to be no solution. Every economic trend pointed in the same direction. Quartz technology was winning, consumer behavior was changing, costs were falling, the future appeared inevitable. For the first time in modern history, many people genuinely wondered whether Swiss watchmaking had any future at all. This is where the story becomes truly fascinating. Many companies respond to disruption by fighting harder. They try to beat the new technology at its own game. The Swiss watch industry also tried something different to cope with the demand for quartz watches. Beta 21 was Switzerland's first mass-produced quartz wristwatch caliber, launched at the 1970 Basel Watch Fair. Developed by a consortium of 20 watchmakers, it offered an incredible accuracy of ±5 seconds per month. But developing quartz technology was fiercely expensive, so 20 Swiss houses pulled their resources. Still, the Beta 21 proved to be a commercial failure. It was incredibly expensive to produce and was quickly rendered obsolete by the 1970s and 1980s as 32 kHz quartz technology became standard. Today, they're prized by horologists and vintage collectors for their sheer historical significance. That's where Rolex understood something that many competitors failed to recognize. The accuracy war was over. Quartz had won. No amount of traditional craftsmanship could change the fact that a quartz watch kept better time. And in many ways, ways, the modern luxury watch industry was born from the ashes of the Quartz Crisis. Without that near-death experience, companies like Rolex might never have evolved into the global luxury powerhouses we know today. The crisis forced the industry to reinvent itself, and that reinvention turned out to be worth billions. And that's it. The Quartz Crisis wasn't just a watch story, it was a lesson about business, innovation, and survival. It proved that even the most dominant industries can be vulnerable when technology changes the rules. Now, if you enjoyed this episode of Watch Wars, subscribe to our channel for more stories about the battles, rivalries, and turning points that shape the watch industry. See you in the next one.